A young prince, tall, handsome, and a fantastic athlete, the champion of tournaments in a medieval age. He is a physical wrestler, an archer that does not miss, a formidable hunter, and a real tennis player who uses both his speed and size to bully his opponents into submission. But this young prince is a spare to the new Tudor dynasty that is trying to secure its power on the throne. His elder brother is the next in line to his father's throne, and this young prince needs a calling. Prince Henry needed something to do. Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm the Knight of History, and this is of course part number 1 of the Henry VIII story. A story about a man who literally changed the way that his country did things, and he did as he pleased. Then more importantly, if you are feeling charitable, please go find the link down below to donate to a charity called Mercy Ships, hospitals on ships helping out people who have absolutely nothing. So any donation will help. I ran the Milan Marathon and made a video about it in an attempt to help the fundraising. So if you can, please do go and give. And if you can't, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, let's get into it. Born the 28th of June, 1491, to his father, the newly crowned Henry VII, King of England, and his mother, Elizabeth York, baby Henry was the third child and the second son. His brother, Arthur, was next in line to the throne. But often people died of illnesses back then, so it was important to have many children and educate them all in similar ways, because you never know who's going to actually end up on the throne. Young Henry and his siblings were taught by some of the best philosophers of the age. They were able to speak English, French, German, Spanish, and Latin fluently, compose music, dance, write poetry, and of course were very well versed in the Catholic traditions of the Catholic Church. Of course, the Catholic Church, with the Pope being the head in Rome. As was the norm for princes and princesses of Europe, political marriages were organized by politicians at an early age. In childhood, Henry's brother was no different. Being 5 years older than Henry, he was engaged to be married to Catherine of Aragon, the Spanish princess who was the niece of the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V. When Arthur was 14, he was married to Catherine. Young Henry, at the age of 9, was, however, the talk of town. He was bright and very welcoming to his new sister-in-law, and of course elated for his brother. Just a few months later, however, young Arthur fell ill and died suddenly in April 1502, forcing Henry into the limelight. He is now the heir to the English throne. The only question was, though, what were they going to do with this Spanish princess? The English still wanted their alliance with Spain, and the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles, needed to find a place for her. Soon, the now 10-year-old Princess Henry and the 16-year-old Princess Catherine of Aragon were engaged to be wed. They would wed 7 years later when Prince Henry was 17 years old. And this was a very, very difficult year for him, because that year his father, Henry VII, died, making the 17-year-old Henry VIII the teenage king. And he was a magnificent ruler from the get-go. He had a colourful court, full of entertainment and parties. The poet Thomas More wrote, "This day is the end of our slavery, the fount of liberty, the end of sadness, the beginning of joy." These high hopes rested heavily on the young king's shoulders. Henry's young life was fun, but he did have a more serious side. He held many medieval tournaments, winning a number of them in his own right. But he used these tournaments to actually train his noblemen for war. Henry dreamed of conquest and transforming England into a great empire, ruling over Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and of course, the English enemy of old, France. Having married the niece of the Holy Roman Emperor, he created an alliance with them, which meant that the Holy Roman Empire would have to come and back him up if he went to war. And in 1513, Henry invaded France, capturing 2 towns quickly, winning the decisive Battle of Spurs. Henry's allies, however, the Holy Roman Emperor, decided not to send his armies, and they did not invade France, which meant that the English and Henry had to sign a peace treaty with France, securing new lands, but more importantly, an annual tax that the French had to pay the English. This invasion was not all sunshine and rainbows, however. There was a negative side. The Scottish King James IV was allied with France, and he decided to take this opportunity to invade northern England with 60,000 men. Henry was, of course, off in France. This meant that the Queen, Catherine, had to organize the defenses against the Scots. With the Queen at the helm of the English army, she managed to squash the Scottish army at the Battle of Flodden. The battle left thousands of dead on the field, including one person in particular, the Scottish King, James IV. Queen Catherine was hailed as a heroine and even organised to send the blood-stained tunic of the Scottish King to Henry in France as a gift. With two major victories over the French and the Scottish, Henry confirmed England's position as a major European political power, and a dream of empire was edging ever closer for Henry. We today think rather unfairly of Henry. We think of him being this bullish, overweight, disease-ridden behemoth of a man, but at this point in his life, he was a catch. He was handsome, he was tall, he was victorious, and a family man, full of love. People loved Henry. An influential priest named Thomas Wolsey, who had started out as the son of a butcher, was a true mastermind, and he masterminded the success for Henry at his early age. By 1514, Henry made Wolsey the Archbishop of York. A year later, he was made the Prince of a Church when he was made a cardinal by the Pope. Henry then made him Lord Chancellor, the chief advisor to the king, almost like the Prime Minister. This meant that Thomas Wolsey became the most powerful man in England behind Henry. He was in complete control of English politics and the church within England. He worked tirelessly to organize affairs of states to ensure that Henry could enjoy himself. Whatever the king wanted, Wolsey would deliver. All of this made Wolsey fabulously wealthy. And oh boy, did he like to show off his wealth. He built this magnificent Hampton Court palace, which was more luxurious than the king's court. This made Henry's courtiers rather envious and called him names behind his back, such as Butcher's Boy and Fat Maggot. But more importantly, they began to plot his downfall, and we're going to talk more about that in the future. By 1516, Henry's ideas of empire came to a grinding halt when Francis I of France came into power. He was smart, shrewd, and a brilliant general. Wolsey could see that outright war against France, with Francis at the helm of the French army, would see English defeat. So he persuaded Henry to make peace with France. Henry wasn't ready to give up on his ambitions, but he saw peace as rather honourable. Wolsey organised a celebration for the signing of the peace treaty in June 1520. The two kings met at an event that became known as the Field of the Cloth of Gold, because many of the tents that were put up in this field were made from gold cloth. This event was so over the top, as these two men, these two kings, tried to outdo one another in their displays of wealth and riches and power. Henry and Francis even met in a wrestling match, which was won by Francis, and of course this made Henry enormously angry. Francis was clearly a worthy opponent for young King Henry VIII. Join us next time when Henry creates his own form of Christianity. Please don't forget to donate if you can, and like, comment, and subscribe. The more you know.